Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot. And I'm excited about today's reading because when I look back at the big picture of the way all of these readings have gone and kind of the trajectory overall, ultimately we're seeing improvement. And the question is, how do we deal with it? So, the question for today is there's a new vulnerability in the energy from your person. Some of you are in communication, some of you are not. Either way, you're experiencing this and it's like it's a new playing field. Got to figure out what to do about it. Reminds me a little bit of what happened in April when we started seeing a lot of people come in, and really it was the energy that had moved very close to you. And then, even when the people ran again, we still felt like the energy was really close, and it was different learning how to play in those rules. So what we see now is with that energy having been there for a little while, there's a certain comfort that comes from that. There's a certain comfort that comes from the energy having been there for a little while, from the feeling of you guys almost having gotten in on the ground floor with one another anyway. So how do you deal with that new vulnerability? Because it does, whether you're in communication or not, really kind of change things. So it'll be a general reading as always. Won't resonate with everybody, shouldn't resonate with everybody. But if it does resonate with you, then by all means, check out some of the other videos. Particularly the ones that have come up here recently all seem to be incredibly well connected, and it's just whenever you come in, this is going to be somebody's first video. Whenever you come in, I'm always going to tell you that they're very much connected. So if this is you, look around because there may be some other messages for you. So let's start by getting the energetic backdrop for the day. It's where I like to start, and yesterday it's where the answers really started coming out. So this is the energetic and emotional backdrop. We're inviting emotional pieces to come in as well, because we're seeing a little bit more of that, and because it's part of what we are here to find out, and especially with that increased vulnerability, there is a little bit more of the feeling of emotions being willing to come out, I guess. So we've got the Knight of Swords. The Knight of Swords is passionate forward movement, but it's like a decisive, moves quickly, intentionally. It's like coming your direction, coming at you sort of movement. And it's, again, that decisiveness makes me ask some questions, because a lot of what we've seen is maybe some decisive forward movement in your direction that results in them either running away or not hitting send. So sometimes it can generate different things. It can look different ways. So let's learn a little bit more about that. I like the idea of decisive forward movement, and it is mostly their energy. So sometimes what comes out here is very shared. Sometimes it's very much you. Sometimes it's very much them. This one's feeling like it's a little bit more them. So we've also got the Two of Wands in the reverse and the Seven of Wands in the upright. So this one is interesting because that Two of Wands is still feeling like the Two of Wands has historically felt for us, where there's an impasse between the two of you that needs to be resolved. There's something that and it's not something like that can be changed. So the age difference is my favorite example to use, because you can't change it, but you can decide that it's not as important, or that it's not as critical that you respond to that. This is like them saying, well, I get that there's an age difference, and all this time I've known on some level that didn't really matter, but now I'm really willing to look it right in the eye, which is, I'm gonna say, please check out yesterday's reading. if this is going to resonate with you at all, you may want to check out yesterday's reading. And then yesterday, I think I said the same thing because I was seeing things that kind of were bouncing off the day before. Of course, they're always connected, but sometimes they're like practically the same reading, just over several days. So this is all about them figuring out, yes, we've got this impasse. I now have the energy and wherewithal to handle it. They have the high ground. It feels like it's a struggle, but that they're ready to handle it. We've got the Six of Wands here, which it's not part of the reading, but it's a little bit of an honorable mention, in that there's this feeling of success that is following you. It's like you're being hunted by success. It's just really slow. And your person is, as we saw yesterday, part of what's slowing it down. But man, if you saw yesterday's extended, now you know why. And not, it wasn't so much that's way new information. It's just the way that it was presented. You now understand um, why it is that they aren't moving forward in their healing as quickly as maybe they would otherwise. But there's a lot of this confidence that's been growing in them layer by layer, and now you're able to kind of see it and feel it, and that's where that new vulnerability is starting to come in for them. So you've got the High Priestess. This is around secrets. So this is around secrets. It's like there's still a fair amount of vulnerability, but there are still some decisions to make, and there are still some secrets there. Because we got the Two of Swords representing the decisions, the crossroads, and what are you actually going to do when you're faced with this Two of Wands situation. Honestly, this is going to help to uncover for your person what values need to be adjusted and the fact that it's values that need to be adjusted for them. But this secrecy is around how challenging and confusing that is. So even though they may get to a place where they say, all right, I understand kind of what needs to change here, they're not necessarily going to know where to start with it. This is why I like to get the energetic backdrop, because this is so much what needed to come out for us to look at the rest of the reading and have it make the kind of sense that it makes. And we look at it every day so that we're able to say, oh, today's one of those days where, like yesterday was an I'm up in my head kind of day. The day before that was crazy frustration. Today is less crazy frustration and a little bit, okay, I'm ready for this, that sort of energy. The Death card from change that is occurring, but this, again, they're looking it right in the eye. This is so their energy. It's like 90-10 them, sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes it's more you. We're just zooming in on them. And that's really fine with me, because I just take whatever wants to come out of these readings and give it to you, because that's where we tend to get the best benefit. But so we knew, and we saw this come out in yesterday's reading, that there's definitely change. And I think we've been seeing that come out. But this is kind of special because, again, they're looking directly at it, which is a little different. We saw the Eight of Pentacles come out yesterday to talk about how they didn't feel like they had that emotional self-mastery, or rather, they lack it and they're aware that they lack it on some level. That's part of what they're looking directly at. I mean, when I say they're looking it right in the eye, it's like they're being vulnerable within themselves. That is why you are seeing and feeling the vulnerability coming from them. And some of you are in communication and you're like, well, they're displaying vulnerability and it's such a different skill or a different skill set to, deal with them with this way, that I just need some advice about how to move forward. We're definitely going to get you that. But I wanted to get the feel for, well, what's actually happening here? Okay, we want this. That's it. All right. Okay, so they're at the end of a cycle, not to be confused with when the world came out in the reverse for them a couple days ago to say that, their third party situation, they're done with it, but it's not done with them. And that was where it was saying it's not done with them. They're at the end of a cycle. It's not the same reference. And they've got the Strength card coming out again today, like they had yesterday. And I think that might have been in the extended, but it was really reassuring when it came out, because it was this feeling of things are changing. Are you going to be okay? Or are you going to turn tail and run again as soon as things get overwhelming? What we saw was, yeah, they probably are inclined to turn tail and run, but they've got a nice strength that's holding them up right now and allowing them to make the progress that they're making. The World card being at the end of a cycle, it sounds like a beautiful thing, and it is, but it's also a little bit confusing because it's part of the reason they're not sure where to go next. They've gotten to something where, and we saw with the third party energy, they've gotten to a place where they know they've learned something, they've seen something that they're not able to really get past or unsee. And that makes it challenging for them. It makes it challenging because they have some realizations that they've got to make. Now, here's a card we haven't seen much of, and that's the Fool in the reverse. This is, I believe why you were seeing the indication come out previously, and I think that was in yesterday's reading. Maybe it was the day before, but I think they were talking about not, the recommendation was not to reach out because they would get overwhelmed and probably turn tail and run. This is telling us that that's very much in the energy, but they are toying with the idea of actually understanding what it is that makes them happy. So I almost get like a, not only don't reach out to them, but kind of hold your breath. Not hold your breath waiting for it, but don't make any sudden moves. They have the ability to get a little bit overwhelmed, and their tendency at that point will be to run. They have some lessons that haven't been learned. It's an honorable mention, although I'm not supposed to use this card. And this is not a surprise. We know that they're very much working through some lessons. We saw yesterday why it's so slow, and what kinds of lessons they're working through, particularly in the extended is where we looked into that. But it is not not easy, not for the faint of heart. But they've got some lessons that haven't been learned. So if you're speaking with them, even if you're in communication with them and they're seeming more vulnerable, you're also probably feeling a little bit of that edge of, well, what all can I do here? It's not entirely comfortable because they're not entirely comfortable. They are showing you an edge of vulnerability, which is kind of a huge step, but they're not necessarily able to move forward with it. And keep in mind here, for as many of you who are in contact with your person, there's 100 who aren't, and that are experiencing this and saying, why do I feel a change in the energy, but I'm not hearing from this person? It's almost like if you energetically look their direction, they look away. And yet, what's causing you to look in their direction is that increased vulnerability. So let's look a little bit more into the nature of this vulnerability, because that's what I'm super curious about. I get that it's there. I can feel that it's there. I don't understand why it's there. Why is it happening? Why is it like this? Why now? What's happening with their vulnerability, and kind of let's learn a little bit more around that. And then we'll see what it is that you're supposed to do to handle it. Oh, something isn't passing judgment, and they're keeping their eyes open. So we've seen the judgment card come out for them in the last couple days a couple times, and it's always been in the upright to say they're looking at the situation. So here it's in the reverse, and it's not saying anything about them not looking at the situation, but it is saying, all right, they're looking at it. They're not super pleased with what they see. This is a tough space for them to be in. It is not an easy judgment for them to pass. But again, as we saw, they don't exactly know what's wrong yet. So they haven't pieced together. They haven't got the perspective together to figure out why it is that things don't seem like they think it should seem. All right. So let's see here. All right, we have the Justice card. The Justice card and the Queen of Wands. These are almost like opposite. Not really. Okay, so the Judgment card or the Justice card has them seeking balance. But it's a tough thing to do. It's not something where you can go run roughshod over it. And this is the energy of running roughshod over it. Just go, 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 move toward what you're passionate about. This is that energy of moving toward what you're passionate about. And yet here is the energy of, I'd like to feel a little bit more balance here. And they're driven by both of these things, but they're aware of it. The fact that they're looking at it and they're seeing that this isn't a balance that can easily be struck. You can't easily run roughshod over something while establishing balance. It's just not the way that these things tend to go. And yet they're equally pushing them forward. So, that's an, I feel like I want to look into how they feel about it. But I also feel like it's implied here how overwhelming and intense it really is. So again, like what we've seen in the past, they have, and we've seen that they haven't learned this lesson here in a recent reading. They've got the Ten of Cups here saying that they need to understand what you do when you run into something that is amazingly, seems impossible, seems too good to be true. What do you do when you come across that? And so we know the answer is to slow down. Don't run roughshod over it. go ahead and look to establish that balance. Understand what it is that you're looking at so that you understand how to handle it. But that is really easy to say and super hard to do. It is even harder to do when you can't see the details of it and you're not entirely sure what to do to move ahead, what to do to move forward. So this is kind of the type of overwhelm. It's things moving in different speeds that has caused them to pull back that vulnerability to begin with. Also, though, that passion is what causes them to open up. And now that they're aware of this cycle and they're able to see it really clearly, they're able to hold themselves open a little bit more. But like I was saying before, the impressive thing is that they're not just being vulnerable here where you're able to see it, they're being vulnerable within themselves. And those are kind of two different things. But they've made it pretty far in order to be able to accomplish this, despite the fact that we just looked at, hey, why aren't they learning their lessons and what am I supposed to do about it? The reality is they are learning some of these lessons, and that it is especially difficult for them to move forward more quickly. I don't know that I would trust it if they were moving forward more quickly. I would think they're probably skipping some steps. So we have the Lover's card. The Lover's card is particularly around, it's got a real twin flamey feel to it. So you'll know that I don't use that term. If you're here, if this is not your first video, you'll know that I don't talk about twin flames very often. But I'm also incredibly aware of what that dynamic is, and that's kind of what we're seeing here. We're being held in a place to see that twin flame dynamic, and they're starting to not quite get comfortable with it, but maybe a little bit to get used to it. So there's this feeling of things holding you in place, making you see it, but there's also this element of here's the bond. Here's what you are. You are part of the same thing. You are very much connected. We saw with them listening to their lessons or with them looking at their lessons and not being able to move super quickly toward them, there's a lot of there's a lot that has to be adjusted within their values, but they don't quite realize what it is yet. You're helping to light the way for them, and it's starting to kind of allow them to let go and go by feel a little bit, but this is a really slow process, and this is why it feels like it's not happening quickly. There's a lot of self-doubt that comes in as a result of that. And so we've got the Queen of Pentacles, which is all about that self-doubt. It's all about kind of it's a questioning self-worth. It's not necessarily low self-worth, but questioning self-worth. So what I'm feeling here with regard to your person's vulnerability is that this is incredibly tenuous. They are not feeling openly vulnerable and super comfortable with it any more than you are. This is a disruptive energy for them. It's a disruptive energy for you, and you're right to ask the question, well, how am I supposed to handle this? Because it doesn't feel when you think of vulnerability, you think of openness and comfort. There's an element of openness that's there, but comfort that isn't, I guess. And that's a challenging place to be. So we've got this Knight of Swords. I think this isn't the first one we read, though. What else came out? Yeah, we got the Two of Pentacles in reverse, and I think that's it. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. And we do want to look at the Two of Pentacles first in the reverse. They've got a balance that they're trying to strike, but they aren't sure what's missing from it. Like, they can't figure out quite why it is that they're having trouble striking this balance. It's not an easy place for them to be. It's not an easy thing for them to figure out. This is challenging because they don't know what they don't know. That's really where I want to go with it. And it does cause them to want to hide. So that sense, and I feel like what we just talked about is kind of the main issue there. There's a feeling of openness, but it's lacking that feeling of comfort. And here with the Knight of Swords in reverse, it's very much a feeling of I could get out of this just as quickly as I'm getting into this. And they're not feeling balanced to begin with. So this vulnerability feels like it's putting themselves out there, but maybe a little bit farther than they've actually like they haven't healed far enough to put themselves out there that far, which is part of why it might feel a little bit strange to you. And it's frustrating if they haven't reached out, right? Because if you're constantly feeling that sense of vulnerability and that sense of openness but lack of comfort, it's like, why are you poking me? You're poking me to make me keep feeling this way, make me keep remembering this. But you're not actually giving the benefit of the comfort. What's happening? It's a very frustrating sort of experience. And a constant reminder of the Six of Pentacles feeling. So here's a card that we haven't seen a ton of lately, but it's about the equal give and take of energy. And so the energy is evening out a little bit, but not, it's, you've known for the whole time that this whole thing didn't pass judgment. You've been aware the whole time that you were not being treated, what you were not receiving the same level of energy that you were putting out. For them, this is something that's really kind of coming at them a little bit more quickly, whereas they might have known it and been aware of it on some level. It was also misaligned with some of their perceptions and what they were allowing themselves to feel and think. So it's coming into alignment a little bit more with them. They're still very much, they're driven to that alignment by the passion. But again, that running roughshod over it level of passion is not super conducive to creating a balance. And so there's a lot of fear, kind of makes them feel like, oh, I could just get right back out of this. I could totally just disappear again. That feeling is part of what's holding both of you back. But the Six of Pentacles is part of what, I don't know. I feel like it attracts you, but it also feels like you aren't going to truly trust that you're going to be treated right until you see it happen. And for them, they're very much afraid that they don't even know how to strike that balance. And I feel like that's a very real thing. They truly don't know how to strike that balance. So this is a tentative sense of vulnerability. I'd like to get their feelings on it a little bit more when we get into the extended reading, because I think we've touched on that a little bit, and we see that today they've got kind of a, I'm ready to move forward. It's heavy in this, it's heavy in the passion energy today, ready to make a decisive movement forward, but this is not, again, an easy way to establish balance. Let's look to see what you should be doing about this, because I think that's really at the root of, that's at the heart of things. Okay, so I'm seeing this new behavior. First of all, what in the heck is it? Secondly, what should I be doing about it? What should you be doing about it? What would be helpful to you? Okay. All right. It's a little bit of stepping back and looking at the big picture and recognizing where you are with it, where you've come from. The good news is you were paying attention all along, so you're going to be able to get there. But you've got the Star card, which is saying you're on the path to union. You're on the path to success. You're on the path to your destiny. But there's still a delay. It still has to do with both of you acknowledging some truths and figuring out how to move them into your way of thinking. So we saw this earlier on, particularly early this year. We saw the Ace of Swords coming out in pretty much every reading, and it's like there's a truth that isn't necessarily new, but it's very much in front of you, and it's been an inconvenient truth. This is true for both of you, but it's played out a little differently. An inconvenient truth that's kind of been right in front of you, but you've developed all of these ways to kind of work around it and not have to deal with it. So this is saying, all right, it's time to allow that truth to be part of your life now, to assimilate it into your way of thinking. That's particularly difficult to do, but that's kind of what the delay is here. So if you watched yesterday's reading, and particularly yesterday's extended, then for sure you get that. It's not even necessarily something that they can assimilate quickly, because once they figure out what the problem is, that's going to be a different set of work unto itself. All right, so there's definitely truth that has to be reevaluated, I guess, and looked at a slightly different way, but I don't think it's truth you're not already aware of. We've got this Five of Cups, which is, it's a sad, sad card. It's got self-shame in it. I shouldn't have done something. It's got that kind of feel to it, but it is like it's not, it's intentionally focusing. It's not, I don't know if intentionally is the right, it's unbalanced. It's an unbalanced level of focusing on what's gone poorly rather than what's possible here. So I'd love to see this card turn over for you to where you'd be able to see all of the positives of what's happened in the past along with the negatives. But right now there's kind of, and intentional was the wrong word, but kind of a heavy focus on what hasn't gone well, not being able to see that light. And the thing is, it's your own light. Like, it's your own light. And so there's a beautiful benefit that you'll have from being able to see your own light, but it's way harder than it sounds, and it involves getting past some of what feels like is inconvenient truth. We've got the Ace of Wands here, ever present opportunities that are arising for you that allow you to go and set your soul on fire. We've seen these opportunities coming in. We haven't heard about them as much in the last few days, but we also know that many of you have already encountered something that's going to set your soul on fire. New job, new situation, not generally a person. There's also been new soulmates coming in, but the Ace of Wands here is not referring so much to the soulmates that are coming in, but to the situations that surround them. I'm holding this, and we don't want it. It's not part of the reading, but the Ace of Wands, that is an important piece, and it's important particularly as it relates to this Five of Cups, because it helps you to switch that perception. It helps you to focus on the positive as well as the negative. So it's not going to take your focus away from what went poorly, and we're not asking you to forget it, but we will say that there is some benefit in being able to see, here's what went well and here's what you've learned. The Knight of Pentacles is here, suggesting that you're moving that direction whether you realize it or not. So this makes everything fine. So yeah, there's a delay. Yes, there's an inconvenient truth you're still not able to completely bring in. Yes, there is an opportunity that you may or not completely be able to see. There's that Five of Cups is saying there's a sense of focusing on the negative, but you're moving in the right direction, and your movement is not as jagged as your person's. What we've seen in the last few days is they've been getting this Knight of Pentacles in the reverse to say that the progress has been very back and forth. It's been very slow. It has not been, and we've even seen why. But your progress has been pretty steady. You have, I just dropped some. You have been making some nice steady progress. And this one fell face up. You have nothing but power and capacity to move forward at this point. Everything you need is there to avail yourself of that that thing that sets your soul on fire. Go ahead and let it help to carry you, because that's a lot of energy that just helps to bear you forward, and it's a beautiful thing. It's also going to it's going to make things a little bit easier as far as absorbing the inconvenient truth, because there's something in here, and I think we saw this in yesterday's reading. I'm not sure if it was in the extended at that point, but we saw it in yesterday's reading that like your progress buoys you forward and helps you to move forward, and you reevaluate some things that happen in your life. And so you don't necessarily get a better job or a bigger house. You just don't mind where you are. You have a new perspective on what you're currently having. It sort of changes the view of things. But this is a decrease in anxiety. That is specifically the mark of the decrease in anxiety. Let's see what else wants to, what was that? Knight of Wands. So that one you can feel pretty strongly as well, associated with the Ace of Wands. This Knight of Wands is forward movement. It's confident forward movement, though. It's passionate, it's confident, it's you feeling like you're standing on your own 2 feet and moving forward quite nicely. By the way, that Ace of Swords does not have to be all figured out in order for you to accomplish this. And the Temperance card, this is a very similar to a message that we saw yesterday. Again, I think it came out in the extended, but it had to do with you having this humble recognition of the fact that even though you're making nice progress, you're making good progress, it is not always like you're always going to be working on something. You're always going to be working to improve this balance. If you do yoga, the asanas, the poses never get easy because you're always working to perfect them. It's this same sort of thing. So even if you're a yogi who's been doing it for years and years and years and years, you're always working to perfect it. So they're always working asanas. They're always working poses. This is the same concept. You're always working to make things better. So you're never quite just relaxing there and saying, yeah, this is as balanced as it's ever going to get. That's not true because it's always changing. Your life is always changing. So you're always needing to make some adjustments to find additional or new balance. Now, you do have some things that you can get off your chest, or in this case, get off your back. It's that 10 of Wands, that feeling of there being a burden there that some of it is not your responsibility. So you've got to figure out how to kind of pull together the pieces that you're able to set down while continuing to hold the pieces that you do hold responsibility for. Some of the things that you're carrying are not your responsibility, though, and that's important. Once you're able to set some of those things down, all of this gets a little bit easier and you're able to deal a little bit more with your person's vulnerability, and that new feeling that you're getting from them. So this has a lot to do with, okay, so this person is kind of being more vulnerable. You have plenty of your own work left to do here. Part of the reason that it feels a little bit uncomfortable is that they are not totally comfortable with it, but part of it is that you have some work to do. So keep working, keep moving forward in what you're doing. Look for the places that are resistance, that constitute resistance within you, because there are definitely going to be some places where you feel like you're running up against old wounds, old issues. And so that's where the self-trust comes in. So you've done a lot of healing, you've built some self-trust, and that's what the Seven of Swords is telling us. The Seven of Swords is in the reverse, is representing your own self-trust that is going to help you get through this resistance. So when you see that you are enacting a defense mechanism, for example, particularly when it comes to this Ace of Swords, inconvenient truth, when you see yourself do this, you're able to say, hold on, I see it, I recognize it. I'm going to allow myself to have that self-trust. It's actually going to help to bolster your self-worth as well. I want to look into this again. Of course, I always look into you, and I like to look into what's happening with you in the extended as well. It just helps for you to understand there are so many lessons for you to be working through. But what is it that needs your focus the most right now? In this case, it's about how do you deal with this person's vulnerability, whether you're able to actually interact with them or not? And the answers have to do very much with focusing on the places where you're learning yourself, and allowing that self-trust to help open some doors for you and to help open some things up for you. Now, with regard to your person's vulnerability, they're feeling some of that openness, but not the comfort. So there's challenges in there as well. We'll look a little bit more into that when we get into the extended. I want to look kind of like just a deeper dive on this question specifically, but I do want to get their emotional side as well. So I think it shows up a little bit in today's energy as well as this. I don't know that I specifically want to look at it here with regard to the energy of the person that is with regard to today's energy. It's going to be a little bit more focused on what is happening with their vulnerability and how they feel about it. So that's what we'll look into in the extended. If you're interested, take a look down below. You'll see the link, and we'll go in and do a deeper dive on what's happening with them. We're also going to do a deeper dive on what you can be doing about it. So that'll be part of the solution as well. All right, so I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I will see you again tomorrow.